Jody and Megan, we're expecting Michelle Sherwood from my office and also Michael Nadolo, who is working with us on the project from MRB. I'm happy to introduce them when we get going, or you can, or whatever way you want to do it is fine with me.
Okay, we can do that. I don't usually do a roll call at committee meetings, but I can still introduce you guys.
Oh, I missed your call.
Yeah, I was asking about we're going to be in person. Okay, here.
Tom Armando is in Jody's office, so you'll hear him.
Oh, okay.
He thought we had an in-person meeting today, so he's showed up.
I was longing for an in-person meeting.
I know that voice.
Yeah.
I thought you were on vacation, Megan.
I am, but I brought my laptop so I could run.
That's very bad. Somebody should chastise you at this very moment.
No, it's okay.
Oh.
Are you out of town or?
Yeah, I'm in Key Largo. My cousin got married yesterday, so.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Nice place.
Yeah, it was a very nice wedding. So.
Nice. It was probably warmer here.
Yeah, well, it was really hot on that beach, and all the guys were in their tuxes, and they were just sweat just dripping down there. But yeah.
Hey, Jody, I have jury duty this morning, so I'm only on briefly, just till 8:30.
Well, hopefully we'll be done by then.
Sounds good.
We only have probably 50 or 60 slides in our deck, so we can go through them. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Well, it is now 9 o'clock, and I'm going to ask Craig to, as he's the vice chair of Audit and Finance, to start the Finance Committee meeting. Jeff is in Albany today, so he won't be here for our meeting.
Great. Good morning.
Morning.
Craig?
Well, let me get the notes up here. We'll start out with, can we approve the minutes first from the last meeting? Or no, we did that. We don't need to do that. So, okay. I'll forego Jeff's.
We do that. We do need to.
What?
We do need to. We just reviewed them in the board meeting, but we do need to approve them.
Okay, let's approve. I don't know if we have enough people though. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep.
And
Hi,
Tom
Dave.
Sorry. Tom is in my office.
Oh, and Tom is there. Tom, yeah, I forget. Okay, thanks. So the only comment I have was I saw in an email that we lost $8,000 for the month of May, and Jody can explain that going forward. But I need approval for the May 13th minutes.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second?
I'll second, Cheryl.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Hold on, let me get back here. We need approval for checks, right?
Yes.
We'll do our approvals first, and then you can get into any of the, if you have any questions on the loan portfolios or anything like that. Any questions on expenses?
No.
I need a motion for approval. 7,052, 53.
52. Yeah, the only one that isn't normal operating expense was our credit card expenses, and that's we paid for the New York State EDC conference attendance for Jody, and also he's staying at the Otisaga, so that, and then just postage, but everything else was normal. And then on the deposit side, we did receive a couple admin fees for our pilots, and we also received admin fees for the Village of Cooperstown's CDBG project for Cooperstown Distillery.
Okay, need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion again.
David.
I'll
Second?
second. Cheryl?
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Abstentions and noes? None. Okay. Next, you want to go over our balance sheet there a little bit there, Jody or Megan? Sorry about the dog.
I don't have it up right now.
Anything out of the ordinary, Jody?
You're muted.
I'm pulling it up now. There's really nothing out of the ordinary right now. But as you pointed out, we did have a deficit of about $8,000 for the month of May. That's again primarily because we haven't received all of our annual pilot payments, and I've got to go before the IGA committee in the month of June to draw down our I think it's $67,000 from the county. That will more than make up the balance of what we're behind right now. Plus, we still have to do a drawdown request for the Oneonta rail yards with Empire State Development. So there's another $100,000 that would be coming in. Hopefully, $150,000.
Is that the Empire State Development though? That's a balance off though, right? That's not an income. That's just what we spent, right?
Yes.
Okay. But the county money is what they give to us yearly.
Yes. They dropped. It went from 75,000 to 67,500, I believe
Right.
it is, last year because of COVID. And because of meeting with them last month and requesting a loan of $600,000 for the Richfield Springs project, I just forgot to bring up that we need to do a drawdown for the annual appropriation. So I'll do that in July.
Great. Great. Any other questions? Without me asking, feel free to jump in as you guys always do anyway, so that would be great. Anything else, Jody?
No, that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's really nothing out of the ordinary expenses or income right now.
Okay, moving on. Any questions on the loan portfolio? Pretty basic.
There were no changes that I could see.
Correct.
I would point out one thing though. Environ Energy, the owner of that business, called me a couple of days ago and asked for a balance of what they owe to us. Apparently, they're working with a potential new buyer. So while I know everybody is confused why we still keep it on our books, she may actually end up paying off the debt on that loan.
Yeah, that's been going on for years. Hopefully they sell it. Move on. Okay, any other questions? I believe that's it. Anything else? Megan, am I missing anything here?
No, I think you got to it all. Just the new and unfinished business that Jody has.
Go ahead, Jody. I thought we'd do that at the end, all of it, but that's okay. Go ahead, Jody. Any new business? finance?
Again, if we just wanted to bring up that we are looking at creating a 501c3 for additional foundation support for some of the activities we're doing, particularly with the Innovation Acceleration Center. Estimated cost by Hotchkiss and Russ for that is going to be between $6,000 and $10,000. I just want to remind people. I know that Andrew had some concerns about whether we're going to be able to do that. I did send late yesterday a copy of incorporation papers that for an innovation center that was done in Indiana. That's very similar type of topic and purpose. So we'll be looking at that probably next month. But other than that, there's nothing else for new and unfinished business.
Yeah,
Without getting into, I think, Joe, go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
well, I think that my only concern is just I mean, it's going to come down to the articulated purposes for the C3, the actual mission statement, and I mean, also I think what our intention is in terms of, I mean, I think moving forward with it, I think I had said before, I could definitely, depending on how we're hoping to utilize it, I could see the value. I think the one thing that we just need to be aware of is just having the C3 won't necessarily open doors to funding, just because we have the C3 corporation. And Patricia could comment to this. I think we just need to be realistic about the local funding environment if that's our intention, to try to tap local funders.
I agree. That was going to be my question, Andrew. What are our intentions and why are we building this? And which I don't think we've gone over. Maybe I missed a meeting, but I haven't heard. This is all kind of new to me. Maybe Jody, you can briefly explain that a little bit.
Yes, we're not really looking for local foundation support or local donation. This is more for the corporate foundation support that's really big into innovation and acceleration. There's a number of corporations in New York and Washington and California that are actually looking to fund a number of these organizations that provide these services. So that's really the purpose of it. But as I start on.
Jody, excuse me. Is there any other examples of IDAs in New York State who have established the 501(c)(3) and how has that worked and the intent? Do we have any people that have done that before?
I'll do some research on that. I know that I believe in Buffalo they have one, but I will get back to you just to let people know that we're working on this as a real concept of how to proceed with innovation and acceleration of small businesses, particularly with the energy type of companies.
Yeah. And there may be some examples, Jody, of maybe people who've done the 501(c) and then some people that have done that innovation center, but maybe in a different formulation through their IDA or another corporation. Would be no reason to reinvent the wheel if it's been done before, right?
Yes, I agree with that, and we'll have much more detail on it at our next board meeting.
So then we're not going ahead with the expense for the attorneys at this point and waiting. Is that Craig what we're doing?
Not until
No, we're not making a motion. He just gave a, no, I wasn't gonna.
Right.
Yeah, he was just giving a cost, which we can discuss if you want more detail into that, which would probably be behoove us to do that. Joe, give us a little more detail on that, on where that cost come from. So I'm sure you'll supply that, right, Jody? Or Joe will? Is Joe on this meeting? No. Or Kurt can?
Yep.
Great. Great
My take is it's just information. We're going to have this discussion. It's always helpful to know what's the legal fee going to be if we decide to go forward. But we haven't had a really in-depth discussion with all the information we're going to need. For example, the sample that Jody's provided from Indiana is just part of informational
Right.
base we're going to need. So
Yeah, ultimately, Cheryl will take care of this in projects, I think, for some of it. But ideally, it would be that we don't waste a ton of time in here. I know Jody's time and Megan's time is valuable. And so
Right.
if the more information we can reduce the amount of meetings we talk about this and either move on with it or don't would be best, I think, for everybody's time.
agreed.
So gather all that information and present it and try to make a quick decision on it. Okay. Anything else? I think we're good. We can move on to projects committee. So I don't understand the motion to adjourn, but if you guys, someone wants to motion to adjourn, go ahead. I mean, never seen that before except for here, but that's okay.
I'll make that motion. I'll make that motion. That sounds exciting.
Great, thank you. Okay, Cheryl, on to you.
All right, well, I
Thank
will
you.
forego the chairman's comments. I'm having some video issues, so I apologize. We'll move right into the approval of the May 13th Projects Committee minutes. Are there any
So moved.
questions or corrections? Thank you, Dave. Can I get a second?
Second,
Thank you, Patricia. Any comments or questions for their conversation? If not, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move right to our presentation today on the Ford Building restoration.
I'm going to recuse myself as a board member from this presentation. Taking the lead on the project is Seth Haight. He's our Chief Operating Officer, and Michelle has been the project planner for this. So I know that Jody and Joe Scott and the attorney from Springbrook are trying to work through the various issues with conflict of interest. So I thought in the case of just being totally transparent that I would withdraw myself from this presentation. And then I know Jody Scott, Joe Scott, and myself are working on whether or not we can make sure that there is no conflict of interest, okay?
Yes,
So,
Thank you,
Patricia.
Patricia.
That's good, Patricia. I just have one question. I think though, being CEO, you have a lot of input on, really good answers for the board, which would be helpful to us if whatever decisions we have to make, obviously recusing yourself from any votes would be, but I think, that I know Seth is extremely capable of taking over, but whatever input I think would be nice to have from you, especially knowing our board and what our makeup and what we truly need to know to make a good decision. So I think your input's important personally. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. But just for this time, let's see what the attorneys come up with. I don't want to put anybody on the board in an uncomfortable position or the IDA in an uncomfortable position. So we're going to wait, I think, for that. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more meetings on this. I'm just saying going down the road,
Yeah,
so you can have some input to help.
Yeah, I really appreciate that vote of support, Craig, very much. Okay, so
Thanks.
Megan, do you mind texting me when I can come back on again, and then is that all right?
Can I send you an email? I don't know that I have your cell phone number.
Oh, you know what? I'll have Seth give me a text.
Okay.
I'll text you when we're done.
Okay.
All right, thanks. All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, Seth or Michael, I guess you're up, or Michelle.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate the committee's willingness to let us present this morning. Cheryl, thank you for being willing to let us do that. I think we've sent some advanced materials over. Our intention is to go through our short presentation today and also some additional financial information. Before I get started though, I want to make sure everybody knows Michael Nadolo. He is from the MRB group. He's joining us here on the call today. Michael has been our consultant working through the financials from the beginning of the project. And that's been almost 2 years now, right, Michael, that we've been meeting and working through things. And Patricia, of course, introduced Michelle Sherwood, who's been alongside me the whole time on the project. So thanks for having us. Michelle, are you able to share our slideshow? Okay, great. That we would like to have everybody take a look at. Okay, so an overview. You may have heard about our project here at the Ford Block. We've, like I said, been working on this for almost 2 years now. The Ford Block represents the section of that main street that really goes from that 190 main community information overhang that you see on the bottom right corner of the picture, all the way down through Key Bank that abuts Muller Plaza. And so it really is encompassing Key Bank, the Green Toad, Latte Lounge, Subway, and that pass-through easement to the parking garage that we'll talk about in a little bit. So it's really sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections of the building that represents the Ford Block. We'll get into our next slide, please, Michelle. Great. So the intention of the project, really the scope of it is to purchase that building. It does span 186 to 212 Main Street. Our overall project involves renovating the 2 upper stories into 22 to 24-ish market rate residential units. They're primarily singles. There are 2 2-bedroom units in the plan. The average is around 700 square feet for each of the apartments. Really the intention, it's a beautiful building. We see it as one of the cornerstones of downtown Oneonta. It's really to preserve this in a historically appropriate way, but to upgrade the interior to allow for energy efficiency and enhanced accessibility. Right now there's staircases, there's an elevator in the project. We'll talk about that in a minute. We feel really great about the partners that are in the building at this point, the commercial partners, and they are all excited to stay in the building. They've succeeded and had sustainability throughout COVID, which has been really encouraging. But they all are vibrant, and we see a continuation of the partnership with those. So let's get into the significance of this. For Springbrook, and this is really where it touches our mission piece, we're really in search of something that we created in the Binghamton area with integrated housing. Integrated housing for us is where we have individuals that we serve live in an integrated setting with people from the community. So in Binghamton, we have a large development. It's over 200 units behind Wilson Hospital. It's called Century Sunrise, and that is a building, 2 buildings, very, very similar to this, former Endicott and Johnson shoe factories, that we were a partner with a developer who renovated those 200 units. Part of the agreement was to set aside 20 or so for people with developmental disabilities. We see this as a similar project, and we would reserve 4 to 5 units within this project for people with developmental disabilities. There's no designation of which apartments or signage for obvious reasons. These are individuals that have the ability to live independently in the community, maybe with supports of a person to check in over the phone or through technology, but certainly in a true integrated setting. The other thing is employment opportunities for people we serve. There are lots of opportunities around downtown Oneonta. We've worked extensively with the businesses in this building and around, as well as the city of Oneonta, and looking at the opportunities that we would have for our individuals through supported employment to contribute to the vibrancy of downtown. Another huge reason for us is we are always bringing in professionals into the area. As you know, we have over 1,400 employees throughout our footprint, but we're concentrated in Oneonta and Otsego County. We have our school building in along 28 on the way to Milford, and we also have the Oneonta campus. We are always in need of professionals, therapists, teachers, teaching assistants. Most of the time when we recruit people to come to the area from out of the area, the question of housing comes up. and where can I find young, sort of affordable professional housing. Oftentimes they get directed to student housing, which most don't want to live in. We love that we have um, a lot of student housing in Oneonta, but it really isn't aligned with the needs of our employment base. So that is an ongoing need for us. And I know from my time on the board at Fox Hospital, it was the same kind of thing. Anytime we were trying to attract a nurse or someone from out of the area, the question was, where can I find a good place to live that isn't student housing? So this would address that need for us. We also see ourselves as a large employer in the Otsego County and Oneonta area as a major stakeholder in downtown Oneonta. Most of the time when our families come or our potential employees come, they kick the tires in downtown Oneonta, and we want to do our part to keep that area vibrant and renewed, and we see this as a fulfillment or partial fulfillment of that role for us. We are really committed to that and want to have that building realize that vision, and also extending in the needs of Otsego County and beyond. So we know that we're a stakeholder in that, and we want to do our share. So like I said, the plans are to renovate the upper floors. I don't know, this looks, okay, now, okay, good. Plan is to renovate the upper 2 floors. They're about 10,000 square feet for each floor. That is the breakdown of the inventory of units. You can see what we're using. All the windows that you see around the perimeter of the building are existing windows. It has beautiful light on 3 sides, which is unique because the side on the far lower part of the screen is what looks over Muller Plaza. The back on the left is what looks out over the valley and Water Street and Market Street. And then of course the right side is Main Street. All the units have independent systems and utilities. There continues to be walk-up stairway access as well as elevator access. We'll touch base about that in a second. This is a preliminary architectural rendering, again, using all existing division walls. So those major walls that you see were original building walls. There's exposed brick, which is beautiful there, that we would continue to use and have that be part of the plan, that we're really trying to reuse any of those original surfaces that are attractive and part of that historical renovation. Can you get to the next slide, Michelle? So this is the architect's rendering of the outside. There's really no changes in the style. That's part of the plan. We are applying for New York State and federal historic tax preservation funds, and so there is an architectural process to work through to maintain the appropriate level of historic appearance of the building. So that process is part of this whole thing. We see some pointing up of the building where appropriate, and renewing of some of the brick and anything that's decayed as part of the project as well. So let's keep going, Michelle. We'll get into, this is the part of the project that I referred to earlier. This is the elevator component. As I mentioned before, the breezeway, the pass-through that goes from Main Street to the parking garage is part of this building, and that is accessed through an easement that the city of Oneonta has had with the current owner of the building for years and years and years. And it's obviously really important to access for Main Street Oneonta because it connects a significant amount of parking. What our intention is to upgrade that area as well as install an elevator in conjunction with the city of Oneonta. And the reason why it is a partnership with the city of Oneonta is that the parking garage also needs an elevator. In our conversations with Mayor Herzig and the Common Council, we came about a plan to share an elevator rather than install 2 in such close proximity, that it would be a great use of resources to combine our needs. So we will locate an elevator in this section of the building that will service both the Water Street entrance to that breezeway as well as the Main Street entrance that you can see. And then it'll have key code access or code access to the upper floors for people that live in those apartments in the upper floors. We presented this asked to the Common Council a couple of weeks ago. They approved our request to fund this as well as an upgrade to that pass-through in their meeting unanimously. And this is what the new finishes would look like. That elevator shaft there on the right, as well as new finishes that would maintain, again, that brick and natural feel. It matches in its look and feel the bridgeway that goes over to the parking garage. So it makes a continuity of style from Main Street throughout. And this is a look at the other side. We also are looking at this as a place to market job opportunities for Springbrook. Part of what this project addresses is a need for a downtown presence for Springbrook, and we see this space as giving us that opportunity. We know that there's a good amount of foot traffic in and around the building. We're always looking for ways to tap into more individuals, more professionals to come work for us. This would give us that exposure. This is a overview of, looking down at that floor plan. So it would maintain that pass through, and we're working on an updated easement with the city. Our timeline is, we've, as I mentioned, met with the City of Oneonta Planning Commission. That meeting has taken place. They approved our request to fund that elevator and passway renovation. We'll be working on our construction documents and our financing plans this summer, hoping to be ready to go to bid in September for construction throughout the remainder of 2021 into the first 2 quarters of 2022. And we hope to be open in the fall of 2022. There's a lot that has to happen within this. Obviously, the summer of 2021 is very important to us. To get all our ducks in a row. We'll talk about our sources and uses of financing here in a second. We have a couple of additional slides. Maybe Michelle, you can advance to those. I'll ask Michael to talk through our pro forma in a minute, but this is a table showing our basic representation of our uses of funds and sources. So our acquisition of the building is 1.1 million. Hard costs that are part of the renovation, 4.3 million. I should say included in that is an adjustment we recently made to reflect increased building material costs. So our number went up about $500,000. We're wondering if that's there to stay. Perhaps by the time we go to bid, that may have readjusted. Who knows? We're planning in the most conservative way we can at the moment. Our soft costs, you can see developer fee, which is Springbrook is a developer. And then there's also a healthy contingency in this project, not knowing there's some variables in working with an older building. I will also note that there's not a lot of site work in and around, so the variability of finding something beneath something we're tearing down will not happen, or under, I don't foresee any digging into any oil tanks because there's really no digging involved in this project. So for sources, we were successful in being awarded a consolidated funding application grant from ESD for $261,000. That incentive letter we expect in the next week or so. We have 1.4 million in those historic tax credits that is part of this project that are critical to the success of the project. That elevator reimbursement from the city that I mentioned that was approved at $411,000. This project also has a commitment letter from the Downtown Revitalization Initiative effort. I know you're all very familiar with that. One of the major objectives of that allocation to Oneonta was development of upper floor housing. And so this fits right in with that mission, and we have that commitment letter. And then we have our long-term financing, including cash from Springbrook, to total the 6.5. I'm going to ask Michael, can you give maybe a 15-second review of the tax credit process and how that works? I just want to make sure, in case the committee has a question on how we calculated that 1.4 million, that those questions get answered.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as you all know, Springbrook is a nonprofit organization. So in order for us to capture the value of the historic rehab tax credits, we will need to form a for-profit subsidiary of Springbrook. What happens is that because this building is on the National Historic Register, and because, as Seth mentioned, that we're going to go through a process with SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, we'll make our investments in the building, and in exchange, we will get tax credits from the federal government and the state government via this for-profit LLC. We then sell those tax credits to a tax credit equity investor who puts money into the project as equity, and that allows us to move forward to get our debt financing and so on like that. So you can see that bottom table between hard, soft, and contingency, we have about 5.2 million. There's some different factors about what percentage of each is going to become eligible basis. That gets us to 4.4 million. And then we get 40%. That's 20% state credit, 20% federal credit. That gets us to 1.7 million. And then when we go to sell it, we get roughly 78.5 cents. This market fluctuates all the time, but that's where we're pegging it right now. And that gets us to $1.4 million. So that's actual cash coming in that allows us to make this financeable. I think that was a little more than 15 seconds, but there you go.
No, that was great. It was great. It was great.
Michael, have you already approached SHPO about this?
Yes, we have. Our architect has submitted the preliminary plans to SHPO. They have given us the initial, not the final, the initial look saying they don't believe that there's an adverse historic impact based on what we're proposing. There's still a number of processes that we have to go through.
The only reason I'm asking that is that my experience on historic preservation tax credits is it can take SHPO and the National Park Service up to like 6 months to approve the project and the final designs. And I'm just wondering how that's going to affect your schedule on construction.
Yeah, we are fortunate to be using 3T Architects, which has they're a specialist in historic preservation. That's basically, I mean, that's their bread and butter, right? That's what they do. So they have excellent relationships with SHPO. They have gone through this process dozens and dozens of times. They know what the SHPO folks are going to react negatively to, excuse me, or positively to. So there is going to be an approval process. There could be delays associated with it, but we think we have the right team to get it through as fast as reasonable.
Michelle, could you put up our critical elements of the pro forma? This is where we're going to give you some more detail about how the funding and the financing works. So if you take those sources and uses and the tax credits and start to put them into a pro forma, and this only shows really about 7 years of what our pro forma looks like. Obviously, Michael has extended that out to 30 years in the full pro forma, but this we sort of blew up because we wanted to show the committee how this all works with timing of funds and how our construction draw occurs almost upfront. Partial historic tax credits come in that year 0, which is the first column. We're working with HCR, the Home and Community Renewal Fund, for our long-term and short-term financing. Obviously, you have to acquire the building. There are fees we have to pay. So the first year that there's a negative cash flow of about $750,000 that you can see. Year 1 is when that permanent financing comes into place. More historic tax credits come into play. And then the city reimburses us for the lobby and elevator because that part of the project would be complete. So we total out to a little over $500,000 loss for the project in the second year. It's really the third year when that CFA and DRI payout occur that you see this start to turn around and get into the black. And then the remaining years that we're showing, those last 4 years, are about what the average years are for a bottom line for this whole project. And we wanted to show you this for a couple of reasons. One, it's so funny because we asked ourselves when we were talking about this project and you know, years and years and years of asking the question of why don't more people do these renovations to upper floor buildings in Oneonta? There's so many buildings that are beautiful and have that potential where you could just see that all taking shape. The answer is it's tremendously expensive to do it. And if you were to finance the whole thing, it would not make sense to do financially. If you were to not have the level of equity that we have through grants, it would be extremely difficult to make a pro forma look attractive to any kind of funder to do so. And that leads us to why the partnership with the IDA is so important and why our ask is an extension and a change to those pilot terms. It really becomes a critical part of the project to have that 25-year look at what we need. This pro forma is with that included. I'm going to ask Michael to comment further about the specifics of what our ask is and how it relates to the pro forma. Could you do that, Michael?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. There's a couple critical things our lenders are going to look for, like any lender. Loan to value, and then very specifically debt service coverage ratio. The bottom two lines of this pro forma are the debt service coverage ratio. And for anybody who's not familiar with the term, debt service means basically how much income, how much operating income is coming in to the business, right? Compared to the debt service that has to be paid out, right? The lenders are going to look for two ratios here. We have our senior debt, and they're going to look for a 1.25 ratio. And then we have our total debt, which includes the HCR debt that Seth mentioned earlier. And that minimum ratio is 1.15. So if we can't show $1.25 of net operating income for every dollar of debt service we have for the senior debt, and $1.15 in net operating income for the total debt service that we have, the lenders will not do this deal. We have identified a couple of lenders that are willing to work with us through this program. These are absolute numbers. They are not. They're not going to go under, right? They're not going to go below that threshold. One of the things that you haven't seen is that all of the numbers in our pro forma assume that we get the pilot abatement that we're requesting from the IDA. If I took out the pilot request that we're doing right now, all of these numbers would be below 1, right? There would be no net operating income in excess of debt service. So the IDA financing is critical for us. The IDA abatement is critical for us. Over time, of course, what happens is that we're able to increase slightly our net operating income year over year. And there does arrive a point where we can drop that abatement down. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail, but I'll just say what our request right now is for a 10-year abatement at 100%.
Of the improvements.
Of the improvements, right? We pay the base tax, we get 100% abatement for 10 years on the improvements. On years 11 through 15, we go to 75% abatement on the improvements. The next 5 years, we go to 50%, and the next 5 years, we go to 20%. That is a total of 25 years. What we're trying to do is basically match where our debt service coverage ratio is going to be enough to allow us to drop that abatement down. Right now, that happens at year 10. We can drop it down and still maintain our debt service coverage covenants with the lender. It floats up a little bit, and then we can drop it down and so on and so forth until year 25, where the project has enough net operating income with full taxes to be able to meet those covenants. I would like to point out that if you look at that bottom tax cash flow, and this again is assuming the IDA assistance, you see we start with a negative $750,000 and then a negative $500,000. Then we get our grant payouts. But if you add up all those lines, Springbrook does not even break even until after year 10. I mean, we're not talking about a return on investment. We're talking about just a return of capital at that point, right? So this is truly a non-profit type of investment that they're making in here. They're not going to have anything close to a normal return on this. The biggest issue and the reason why we're asking for this deviation from your UTEP is because we will not be able to get financing without it. So that's the best explanation. I'm happy to go into more details about how we arrived here. We've looked at just about every program, just about every lender that we could, and this is the one that makes it work.
Thank you, Michael. Are there questions that we can answer on anything that I presented or Michael presented that we need to answer or go back over, or anything that more information we could give to the board or committee?
Well,
Hey, Seth.
my main question is, when are we actually going to get an application from you guys?
So Michael has taken the lead on the application. Michael, I think we have that essentially ready to submit.
Yes.
Is that right?
We have the application, the seeker, we have a couple of attachments, and we have a memo that outlines what I just described, which is the reason for our request for a deviation. So all those are ready.
And my understanding is that you're working on a cost benefit analysis for us.
That's correct. And I'm happy to go into that. We've done cost benefit analyses for probably 3/4 of the IDAs in New York State. In this particular case, since you're dealing with a residential project, the Inform Analytics platform that I know you normally use from CGR will not work. They don't, that platform does not contemplate housing developments. So, you know, for the IDA's benefit, we'll produce that cost benefit analysis that's required for your contemplation and award of assistance.
And again, I hate to beat around the bush, but how soon will we be getting all this stuff?
I think we're ready to send. We wanted to introduce the project and make sure there was some background of information for you to have and you know, receipt of it. So I think we're ready to send.
Seth or Michael, this is Craig. How you doing?
Hey, Craig.
Nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very thorough. My question to you is, how long does it have to stay in that LLC? For the life of the project, or for the?
The tax credit compliance period for our equity investors is 7 years. So we have to maintain that entity and all those arrangements for 7 years. That's an absolute minimum. However, I think the other item in here is that our lenders are providing us a 30-year term, and the HCR loan is on extremely favorable terms. So we wouldn't want to do anything that would jeopardize the arrangement with either our senior lender or the HCR lender. So while we could technically exit the LLC and put it into, you know, another entity, that would require a tremendous number of hoops, and that I think is probably not worth it at that point. In any case, Springbrook is going to want to maintain ownership of this asset in a separate entity for liability purposes. So I don't think there'd be a very compelling argument to make a change after that 7-year compliance period. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so you're not change, so you won't change, so that you're looking at 25 to keep in there, to keep it in for 25 or 30 years? Is that the plan?
30 years is the term of both the senior loan and the junior loan. So yes, we would want to keep it in that LLC for those 30 years.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Seth.
I have a quick question for Mike. Seth, it's nice to see you on screen when you're not selling Chevrolets. So anyway,
Yeah, I'll tell you, Tom, I hear about that all the time. I have to tell
I'm sure
people that
you do.
it's not a nighttime job. I'd be more than happy to help, but I'm not an official employee.
My question is about how it was pretty clear that the pilot is on the improvements, not on the base, correct?
That's
And
right.
and what is the base based on going forward?
The existing assessment, which is the current assessed value is $950,000. And I'm sorry. Yes,
I think
that's
you're right.
correct. And I worked with the assessor for the town to determine what the likely future assessed value is. So we have that number as well, but it's just abating the amount above that $950,000.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I think that's a really important distinction. That the taxes that are currently being paid on that property will continue to be paid.
Exactly.
And the assistance is based on a multi-million-dollar improvement to the property.
That's right.
And so that's pretty important, I think, to stress for the public.
Dave, I couldn't agree more, and that has been a question when we presented to the city of Oneonta. That exact question came up. I think it's critical to the talking points, critical for the community to understand. We're not asking to change or reduce anything that is currently being paid.
Yeah, absolutely. The other part of it is that the public access to the elevator is pretty significant. And that's I think it's a really positive part of this project. I've heard from numbers of people how difficult it is for older people to go from the parking garage to Main Street without an elevator. So I think that's going to be hugely beneficial for people to have a positive view on the project.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think those are great points. I think those are echoing the same thing that came out of the Common Council. Really, those exact two points.
So Dave, I thought they were great questions too. They would have came if someone else and say it for me, but those numbers weren't presented to us yet at this point, right?
Craig, what numbers are you talking about?
The taxes. So you're saying nothing's gonna change in the you're looking for the abatement on the current tax level, which is assuming a $4,500, $100,000.
So, Craig, no, hang on a second. So we are not looking for abatement on what taxes are currently being paid. It would be on the improvements that we're proposing to make to the building moving forward. So the base that's currently paid stays the same. We continue to pay those taxes.
Great. I'm glad you explained that. Yep. Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know if it was explained in your presentation. I don't know. Maybe I missed that part of it. Was it in there? It's good. I think, like Dave said, that's an important part of this whole thing, obviously, especially
Certainly.
the IDA.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig.
Any other questions from the committee?
Great presentation. Thank you, guys.
Yes, excellent job, guys.
And Michelle, sorry.
Thank you all so much. If there's anything you want further as a follow-up, Megan knows where to find us. Most of you know where to find me. So great seeing you all. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation to the meeting.
Thank you so much for your time today, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl.
Bye.
All right, so I guess we can go ahead and move on while we wait for Patricia to join back in. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at the project trackers. Jody, if you'd like to start with, how about we start with the rail yards first? For any updates or questions that anyone has on that?
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. The only update on the rail yards was last week I did tour with a group of investors from the Connecticut area who are looking at the possibility of purchasing the Oneonta rail yards or a good portion of it for a industrial hemp manufacturing company. The big issue I have with that is that they claim they're going to be a high energy user, both in natural gas and electric. And I'm requested at the meeting last week, and again, I requested yesterday, that they give us their projected energy demands, because I'm not sure we can meet their demands based on what I'm hearing from New York State Electric and Gas. And there's no point in really pursuing that with them if we can't provide the energy.
When do you expect to get that information from them?
I was hoping to have it before the end of the week. I reached out, Al Rubin is taking a lead in this from his community, from his perspective. I reached out to him yesterday again and said, Al, I still don't have this information, and he was going to contact them and push them to get it to me by the end of the week.
Okay. Any progress with Corning at all in regards to the site?
No, Corning is a kind of an odd discussion. They do one project at a time. They have not said no to the site, but I'm going to be reaching out to them again later this afternoon and pushing them again. I really don't want to go above my contacts at this present time. I think that would kind of cause a difficult strain on our relationship. So I'm dealing with right now the people that we normally deal with, but I'll reach out to her again today. The good thing is that they paid their annual pilot payment for this year ahead of time, and we're scheduled to close on with their latest project in the next 2 weeks, I believe.
Okay, great. And I don't think you need to reach out specifically right now just because I asked that question. Just curious if we had heard anything back from them. So I don't, if the site's available and if we have somebody interested, I think we probably should give them the courtesy of letting them know. But I think you can let that play out as it progresses.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions on the rail yards?
Cheryl, the only thing I'd say is that this is a recurring thorn that keeps popping up, the idea of whether or not, you have people with financial capabilities interested in the rail yards, and yet can't provide them with either the electricity or the natural gas they need to do anything, nor do we have an alternative. So it's been a problem for a long time.
And likely will continue.
Likely will continue.
Jody, did you have something else you wanted to share on that?
Well, also last week I did tour the Oneonta Business Park with the attorney for Brooks Bottling Company. They are interested possibly in relocating from where they were planning on building to that site because they have water and sewer availability. Where they don't really have that, they'd have to expand their wastewater treatment plant in order to handle the new loads. Megan reached out to New York State Electric and Gas to find out where the natural gas line ends in our park, and their response back was, well, we need to approve any new usage since there's so limited amount of natural gas available. So that's causing a problem with another one of our projects.
Well, that's not uplifting news, but
So the question is, though, he's running now, but he can't run out there?
Well, we haven't broached with them who it is yet, and that would be the argument I would be making, is that they're an existing user right now. They'd be allowed to expand where they currently are. So if they their operations there and move the Oneonta Business Park, it should have a net.
So I wouldn't say it would be a problem. I just, I think it's a little overstated on being in the energy business, knowing more than most. It's a little overstated on what's not available, I think. And back to the rail yards. So this company needs a lot of energy. Is that why we got to that, Dave? You made that statement. I didn't get that part of it.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
They indicated that they actually have a high demand on electricity because a lot of their processing equipment is high energy usage.
Okay.
We're just waiting to get the numbers back from them to send them on to NYSEG.
Great.
All right, so we'll move into Richfield Springs Business Park.
I guess everyone's heard by now that the county did approve a loan to the IDA for an interest-free loan for up to $600,000. It was a unanimous decision, which, to be honest, was very impressive that the entire board agreed to assist the IDA in this project. So at this point in time, the village of Richfield Springs and the town of Richfield Springs are working on finalizing a water and sewer district memorandum of agreement. And we notified our engineering firm to proceed with final designs and bidding documents for the project. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions on that project? All right, we'll move into the director's report. If there's any highlights you'd like to make there, Jody.
Really on my report, no, we'll discuss most of them in the under new and unfinished business.
Okay.
Which I'll start right now for the
Yep, I was
matrix.
gonna say, might as well move right in there.
I sent out a revised matrix for the deviation for our pilots and our uniform policy. And what I had done was I realized that even though all of these projects, they list all those items and they say you have to have 10 of those items in order to qualify for a deviation, they list a number of things that are somewhat redundant, which is including number of jobs being created, and they have like 5 different categories: 4 to 50, 4 to 50 to 70, and each one are given one criteria. So what I did was I put a weighted system on those so that you could actually, if you had 500 jobs being created, you would get up to 5 points or 3 points, as opposed to just 1. What that ultimately does is it allows 2 different criteria. One, if you have all 10 items, 10 out of those characteristics, you would qualify. Or if you scored a 10 but had less characteristics, because the weighted system goes on the amount of investment as well as the amount of jobs being created. And I felt that if there were more jobs being created and heavier investment, it should score a little higher. So that's really the only change on the matrix. I'm planning on having a entire policy to our next board meeting so that we can adopt it as our criteria for deviation. And again, it's a deviation not just for housing projects, but it would also for any type of manufacturing. So for example, Corning, if they're not creating any jobs and it's just doing a $50 million expansion, that would score higher because of the amount of investment. Or likewise, if they're going to add 100 jobs, they would have a higher score on that.
Okay, thanks, Jody. So feedback from the committee, I'm guessing what you're looking for at this point in time?
Yes.
I think there were a few emails exchanged back originally with the format, and it seemed like most individuals were appreciative of the approach, the consistency. So with these changes, I will just open it up to the committee for any additional feedback for Jody.
Well, it certainly allows us to be able to actually document why we're making a deviation. So I look at it as a positive thing.
I agree with that, Jody. And I feel like it just, again, gives us a good framework to really consider different projects or deviations that we may want to, that make a difference in our county. Any other feedback from the committee? All right. Hearing none, we can move on to, if anyone does have any, feel free to email Jody. If there's any categories you feel are missing or things that are left out or should be added or removed, please feel free to send those comments on to Jody.
Next thing on is yesterday I did receive an email from the attorneys for Advanced Biotech. They are the company from New Jersey that actually does, what do they do? They do natural flavoring and fragrance ingredients for distribution worldwide. They're in the process of purchasing the former Medicoach property. They're looking at about a $5 million project, including acquisition costs, equipment, and renovations. And they are looking for some type of pilot agreement with us for this project. So I haven't reviewed the application yet. I did send it on to Joe Scott. I haven't heard back from him as well. There are some missing pieces in it that I have to get back to their attorney on. But that one did come out of the blue. I wasn't expecting them to submit a application when I talked to them about 3 weeks ago.
Joe, did you have any concerns or flags with that?
I'm sorry.
Do you have any concerns, or are there any flags with that application that you're expecting?
No, actually, I think they're going to be creating about 6 to 7 jobs in the first year. So that's positive. The only concern that I have, but they've gotten site plan approval from the town. A lot of their fragrance and storage of these ingredients, they're highly flammable. So as long as they meet the code officer's concerns regarding fire and safety, that's really the only issue I see with the project. And we'll again be looking for the seeker review that the town did on it to supplement our review. The next one is a company called NextAmp is looking to build a 6.2 megawatt solar facility at Hartwick. The town, they originally requested from the county a waiver on pilots. Chairman Bliss sent them a letter back saying that the county wanted a pilot and that their pilots were being handled by the IDA. So they contacted me 2 days ago and want to set up a meeting next week to discuss their project with us. And they are looking at doing a proposed pilot on this project as well. So I'll probably meet with them next Tuesday afternoon. We're trying to confirm a time when they'll be here. But I just thought I'd bring that up for everybody.
Jody?
Yep.
I just wanted to add, Jody was at the town board meeting last night. I was at the town board meeting. I stuck around for the discussion on that solar project. And basically the seeker on that is going to be with the city. The town involvement, it appears, is only the actual connection between the solar panels and the NYSEG power lines. That's going to be an underground line that does go into the town. So the city is going to be the lead on that. The interesting thing about it, this is 26 acres of solar panels overlooking the Ravine Parkway, Suncrest Terrace, all that residential area. So this is going to be a pretty interesting discussion, I think, when it comes up. 26 acres of solar panels is a pretty significant expanse. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And it's a pretty significant investment. Jody, what was the investment that Corning made in that small area they put panels in?
I think it was about 1.2 million from start to finish.
That was maybe a half acre?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're 1.2 million for a half acre versus 26 acres.
So there's 2 ways, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to Joe on this project early on, is there's 2 ways to actually do pilot agreements. One is what we did with Corning, which is just based on the construction numbers. The second is that it depends on how much energy they're going to generate and how much profit they're going to save. And actually some IDAs get a percentage of that for 25 years. So we're going to look at both options.
Do we know if this is a lease situation, if they're leasing property from Hartwood College, or do you know that relationship or not?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Again, hopefully I'll know that on Tuesday. When I have a time, I'll invite you, Dave, to sit in on the meeting.
You mean like Jeff invited me to sit in on the opening of Cooperstown Distillery on Saturday, that kind of an invitation, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks for doing that for me. I'll trade you. You can go to New Jersey for me.
No, that's fine.
That's one thing I didn't mention is that they are having the grand opening of the Cooperstown Distillery this Saturday at noon to 2. The state actually issued a press release on it. They expect, for some reason, I have no idea why, they expect the state controller to show up. But we were asked to speak. I asked Jeff if he'd make a brief remarks, and Jeff's going to be out of town, so we asked Dave, the vice chairman, to speak at the event.
And I'm going because they're free samples. That's the only reason I'm going. So
Keep the speech under an hour, Dave.
yeah, it'll easily be under a minute. I can guarantee it.
So the next thing on the agenda we've already discussed, which is the county's loan to us. The last thing I have on here is that, as Dave indicated last night, I was at the town board meeting in Oneonta. We are looking at doing a community development block grant application for the IOPSIS. It would be a $750,000 grant to retain 32 jobs and to add about 18 to 20 jobs over the next couple of years. The town was receptive and voted unanimously to us to do an application for the project. And it would be patterned similar to what we do with custom electronics, so that there's 2 formulas that we normally have to meet. One is job creation and the other is private investment. The ratio is 40% public monies to 60% private money. So we informed the town board that we would do it very similar to what we do with custom, is that we would not do a drawdown unless we were only reimbursing 40% of the jobs, and that there was 40% of the expenses, and that they were matched by an equal number of jobs being created for the formula. And the town, that worked very well with the town last time. So that's all I have for projects today.
All right, does anyone else have anything new or unfinished? Okay, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I'll
Thanks,
pretend we
everyone.
don't need a second. Everyone have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.